I never thought anyone would find me out here, until she walked into my barn and said, "You're my daddy." The sun was setting behind the mesa when I heard the creak of the barn door. I'd been alone out here for nigh on 8 years, and in all that time, the only visitors I'd had were rattlesnakes, coyotes, and the occasional Apache war party passing through. My hand instinctively moved to the Colt .45 on my hip as I turned from the mare I'd been brushing down. What I saw made me question whether the desert heat had finally addled my brains. A little girl, couldn't have been more than 10 or 11, stood silhouetted in the doorway. Her dress was torn and dusty, her face streaked with dirt and tears, and her brown hair hung in tangled knots around her shoulders. But it was her eyes that stopped me cold. Green as spring grass, just like mine, just like my mother's had been. "Mr." she said in a voice small as a sparrow's chirp. "Are you Jacob McBride?" I set down the brush, my hand still hovering near my iron. "Depends who's asking, little one. You lost." She took a step forward, and I could see she was favoring her left foot. "My mama told me to find you if something ever happened to her. She said you lived out here past Devil's Canyon in a place where nobody else would go." "Your mama was right about that last part," I said, studying her face. "What's your name, child?" "Sarah Beth Carlyle." She lifted her chin with a defiance that reminded me of someone, though I couldn't place who. "And you're my daddy." The words hit me like a Winchester slug to the chest. I felt my knees go weak, and I had to lean against the stall post to keep from falling over. "Now hold on there, missy. I think you got the wrong man. I ain't nobody's daddy." "Yes, you are." She reached into the pocket of her dress and pulled out a piece of paper, worn soft from folding and unfolding. "Mama gave me this. She said if I ever needed to find you to show you this." My hands shook as I took the paper. It was a letter, written in a familiar hand that made my heart skip like a stone across water. "Jacob, if Sarah Beth is reading this to you, then I am gone, and she needs you. I know you never wanted children, never wanted the responsibility. I know you told me you weren't the marrying kind when you left Tombstone that spring, but she is yours, Jacob. She has your eyes, your stubborn streak, and your way of tilting her head when she's thinking hard about something. I never asked you for anything before, but I'm asking now. She's a good girl, smart as a whip and brave as any man I've known. All I ask is that you keep her safe until she's old enough to make her own way in the world. Always yours, Catherine." My legs gave out and I sank down onto a hay bale, the letter fluttering from my fingers like a dying bird. Catherine. Sweet Catherine, with her laughing eyes and her way of making even the hardest men go soft around the edges. I'd loved her more than my own life, but I'd been young and stupid and scared of being tied down. So I'd ridden out of Tombstone one morning before dawn, telling myself I was doing her a favor, that she deserved better than a drifter with blood on his hands and ghosts chasing his back trail. "Mama died 3 days ago," Sarah Beth said, her voice steady despite the tears running down her cheeks. "The fever took her. Before she passed, she told me to come find you. Said you'd be here, hiding from the world like you always did." I looked up at her, this little girl who claimed to be my daughter, and saw Catherine in every line of her face. The same stubborn jaw, the same way of standing with her weight on one foot, the same fierce intelligence burning in her eyes. "How'd you get here, child?" I asked, my voice coming out rough as sandpaper. "Walked mostly. Rode when I could catch a wagon heading west. The last driver let me off at Widow's Creek, and told me Devil's Canyon was about 20 miles north. I'd been walking since yesterday morning. 20 miles. Through some of the most dangerous country in the territory with nothing but her own 2 feet and more grit than most grown men possessed. If she really was my daughter, she'd inherited more than just my eyes. "You hurt your foot," I observed. She glanced down at her left boot. "Stepped wrong on some loose rock this morning. It ain't too bad." I stood up, my decision made. Whatever else might be true, I couldn't send a child back out into the desert alone. "Come on up to the house. We'll get that foot looked at and get some food in you. Then we'll figure out what's what." The house wasn't much, just a one-room adobe with a stone fireplace and a couple of windows I'd cut myself, but it had kept me alive and hidden for 8 years, which was all I'd asked of it. I lit the oil lamp and gestured for Sarah Beth to sit on the single chair while I knelt to examine her foot. She'd worn a hole clean through the sole of her boot and her foot was raw and bloody underneath, But she hadn't complained once, hadn't even limped much when she thought I wasn't looking. "This is going to sting," I warned as I cleaned the wound with whiskey. She bit her lip but didn't make a sound. Tough as rawhide, this one. As I bandaged her foot with strips torn from a clean shirt, I found myself studying her face in the lamplight. The resemblance to Catherine was unmistakable, but there were other things too: the way her eyebrows drew together when she was concentrating, the stubborn set of her mouth, things that reminded me uncomfortably of myself. So I said, settling back on my heels, "Tell me about your mama. What was her life like after?" Sarah Beth's face brightened. "She ran a boarding house in Tucson, made the best apple pie in the territory, and she could shoot better than most men. She taught me how to ride and how to handle a gun, and how to read and cipher. Said a woman needed to know how to take care of herself in this world. She was right about that." I poured myself a whiskey and offered her some water from my canteen. Did she ever marry?" "No, sir. Said she'd given her heart away once and never got it back." Sarah Beth looked at me with those two old eyes. "She was talking about you, wasn't she?" I knocked back the whiskey and poured another. "Your mama was a good woman, too good for the likes of me." "Then why'd you leave her?" The question hit like a slap. "Because I was a fool kid, who thought he knew better than everyone else. Because I was running from some bad business and didn't want to drag her into it. Because I was scared of being responsible for someone else's happiness." "What kind of bad business?" I studied her face, trying to decide how much truth a child could handle. "The kind that leaves men dead and puts prices on heads. I killed some men who needed killing, but the law didn't see it that way." "Are they still after you?" "I don't rightly know. That's why I came out here to places where even the coyotes think twice about trespassing. Been 8 years now without a sign of trouble." Sarah Beth nodded gravely. "Mama said you were the kind of man who'd do what was right even if it cost you everything. She said that's why she loved you, even after you left." The words twisted in my chest like a knife. She shouldn't have loved me. I didn't deserve it, maybe, but she did anyway. Sarah Beth yawned, exhaustion finally catching up with her. "What happens now? Are you really going to take care of me like Mama asked?" I looked at this brave little girl who'd walked 20 miles through hostile country to find a father she'd never met, based on nothing but her dying mother's word in a faded letter. What kind of man would I be if I turned her away? "I reckon I am," I said. "Though I got to warn you, I don't know the first thing about raising children." "That's all right. I'm pretty good at taking care of myself." She smiled then, and it was Catherine's smile, bright enough to light up the darkest corners of a man's soul. "Besides, Mama always said the best way to learn something was to jump in with both feet and start swimming." The next few weeks fell into a routine that surprised me with how natural it felt. Sarah Beth proved to be everything Catherine's letter had claimed: smart, brave, and independent to a fault. She insisted on doing her share of the chores, feeding the chickens and gathering eggs, helping me tend the small garden I kept behind the house. She could already cook better than most cowboys and could shoot a rifle nearly as well as I could. But it was the quiet moments that got to me, watching her read by lamplight in the evenings, the way she hummed while she worked, the fierce concentration on her face when she was learning something new. She was building a place for herself in my life without even trying, filling corners I hadn't even known were empty. One evening, about a month after she'd arrived, I was teaching her to clean and oil the weapons when she looked up at me with those serious green eyes. "Do you regret," she asked, "not being there when I was born, I mean? Not knowing me when I was little?" The question caught me off guard, though I should have expected it. "Every day," I said honestly. "Your mama was right, I was a coward. I told myself I was protecting you both by staying away, but the truth is I was protecting myself. I was afraid of failing you the way I'd failed everyone else I'd ever cared about. Have you failed me now?" I looked at her, this remarkable child who'd faced down the desert and found her way to me when she needed help most. "I hope not. I'm trying my damnedest not to." She nodded gravely. "Mama always said the only real failure was giving up. As long as you keep trying, you're doing all right." Your mama was a wise woman. Yes, sir, she was. She also said that sometimes the best gifts come wrapped in the strangest packages. Sarah Beth smiled that radiant smile again. I think she was talking about us. It was 2 days later when they came. I was splitting wood behind the house when I heard the thunder of hoofbeats approaching fast. Through the dust I could make out 3 riders, and something about the way they sat their horses told me they weren't friendly visitors. "Sarah Beth," I called. "Get in the house and stay down." She She appeared in the doorway, her face pale but determined. Who are they? I don't know, but anyone riding that hard out here is either running from trouble or bringing it. I grabbed my rifle from where it leaned against the woodpile. Remember what I taught you about the rifle in the corner? Yes, sir. If shooting starts, you use it. Don't hesitate. Don't think about it. Just pull that trigger. I met her eyes, trying to convey everything I couldn't say out loud. You understand me? I understand. The riders pulled up in a cloud of dust about 50 yards from the house. I could see them clearly now, 3 hard-looking men with the kind of eyes that had seen too much blood and liked it. The one in front, a big man with a scar running down the left side of his face, looked familiar. Well, well, he called out, his voice carrying clearly in the still air. If it ain't Jacob McBride. Been a long time, Jake. Recognition hit me like a physical blow. Tom Brennan, one of the men I'd ridden with during my outlaw days. The kind of man who'd shoot you in the back and then go looking for your widow to settle old scores. Hello, Tom. Can't say I'm pleased to see you. Brennan laughed, a sound like grinding glass. I bet you ain't. See, Jake, we got ourselves a problem. That business 8 years ago in Silver Creek, turns out there's still folks who remember it. Folks willing to pay good money to see justice done. The law already settled that business. Maybe the law did, but Frank Morrison's brother, he don't think justice was served. He's put up $1,000 for the man who brings him your head. Brennan's grin wide. Lucky for us, we happened to hear about a man matching your description, living out here in the middle of nowhere. I kept my rifle ready but not obviously threatening. Not yet. You rode a long way for nothing, Tom. I'm not the same man I was 8 years ago. Maybe not, but dead is dead, and $1,000 is $1,000. His eyes shifted to the house, and his grin turned ugly. That's your woman in there. Maybe we'll have ourselves some fun before we ride out. Something cold and deadly settled into my chest. That'd be a mistake, Tom, a fatal one. Big talk for a man outnumbered 3-1. Brennan's hand moved toward his gun. Tell you what, Jake, you come out here with your hands up, and we'll make it quick. Keep fighting and we'll take our time with whatever's waiting in that house. I felt rather than saw Sarah Beth move behind me, heard the soft scrape of metal on wood as she picked up the rifle. My daughter, my brave, fierce daughter who deserved better than to die in the desert because of my past mistakes. All right, Tom, I said, taking a step forward. You want, come and take me. What happened next happened fast. Brennan went for his gun, and I brought up my rifle in the same motion. The Winchester barked and Brennan pitched backward out of his saddle. The other two were already moving, their horses dancing and screaming as bullets started flying. I rolled left, working the lever and firing again. The second man spun around and fell, but the third had found cover behind a boulder and was shooting back, his bullets chipping adobe from the house walls. Stay down, I yelled to Sarah Beth, but I needn't have worried. She was already flat on the floor, rifle ready, waiting for a clear shot. The third man made a run for his horse, thinking to escape and maybe come back with reinforcements. He made it about 10 feet before Sarah Beth's rifle cracked from the doorway. The man stumbled, caught himself and kept running. I put him down with my next shot. The silence that followed was deafening. Dust drifted in the still air, and somewhere a crow called from the mesa top. 3 men lay dead in the dirt of my little sanctuary, and I knew that everything had changed. Sarah Beth, I called. I'm all right. She appeared in the doorway, pale but steady. Are they all dead? Yeah. I walked over to check the bodies, making sure. You did good, girl, real good. I killed a man. Her voice was quiet, thoughtful. You protected your family. There's a difference. I put my arm around her shoulders. You all right with it? She considered this with the gravity of someone much older. Mama always said there were times when a person had to stand up and be counted, even if it was hard. I reckon this was one of those times. Your mama was right. I looked around at the bodies, at the blood soaking into the desert sand. But this changes things. If Tom found me, others will too. This place isn't safe anymore. Where will we go? I thought about it, looking out at the vast expanse of desert that had been my refuge for so long. North, maybe. Montana Territory. I hear there's good land up there for folks willing to work for it. We could start over, maybe run some cattle. Would you like that? I looked down at her, this remarkable child who'd walked into my life and changed everything. With you, I think I would. We spent the rest of the day burying the dead and packing what we could carry. I'd accumulated more possessions than I'd realized in 8 years of hiding. Books, tools, memories, but most of it would have to stay. We'd travel light and fast, the way I'd learned to do in the old days. As the sun set behind the mesa for what I knew would be the last time, Sarah Beth and I stood looking out at the desert that had sheltered us both. "Are you scared?" she asked. "A little," I admitted. "It's been a long time since I cared about anyone enough to be scared of losing." "You're not going to lose me. We're family now." Family. The word felt strange on my tongue but good, like coming home after a long journey. "Yeah," I said, "I reckon we are." We rode out before dawn, heading north toward a future I couldn't predict but no longer fear. Behind us the little adobe house sat empty in the growing light, and the desert wind began to erase the last traces of our passage. I never thought anyone would find me out there in that god-forsaken place where even the rattlesnakes had to think twice about making a living. But Sarah Beth had found me, and in doing so she'd found something I didn't even know I'd lost: the man I was supposed to be. Catherine had been right about one thing: the best gifts do sometimes come wrapped in the strangest packages. Mine came in the form of a 10-year-old girl with green eyes and her mother's stubborn streak, walking into my barn on a desert evening, and changing my life forever with 4 simple words: "You're my daddy." And for the first time in my life, I was proud to be exactly that.